Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Show that I want to start with a question. Do you have a difficult relationship with your maternal impactor or your mother? That's what this is all about, because many of you have been writing into me fearing that your mother might be a narcissist. And one of my most popular videos that I have on here on YouTube is for daughters of narcissistic mothers, how they can not just survive, but thrive. So in today's video, we're revisiting that. I'm going to be talking about narcissistic personality disorder, things that you may be experiencing in your life if you had a narcissistic mother, and ways that you can handle a narcissistic mother. So before we get into it, if you happen to be new to this YouTube channel, well, hello and welcome. Please introduce yourself. Make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell icon so that every time I roll out something new, which is every Tuesday and every Thursday, you will get notified and you won't miss a thing. All right, so let's move it on into today's content. So first, let's talk about narcissistic personality disorder, because a lot of people don't even know what this is. They don't even understand that it is a diagnosable disorder. So the common signs of NPD, as we would call it, are lack of empathy, arrogance or being full of themselves, kind of a haughtiness, let's say, inflated sense of self, entitlement. They feel very entitled to get what they want, for things to be their way, being preoccupied with fantasies of beauty, wealth, power, excessively seeking admiration from others, near constant jealousy of other people, lots of taking advantage of other people, lots of manipulating other people for their own personal gain, constant comparisons of themselves, others, objects, right? Like what's better. It's always about like what's better, what's the best. And also exaggerating their accomplishments and their attributes. There is something about that they say that they can do more, or they lie about their credentials and have no problem with that. So if you had a narcissistic mother, you might have experienced some of these symptoms. So let's just do a couple of these so that you can see if you can see yourself in there. So you may have a codependent relationship with a narcissistic mother. And the narcissist is seeking to create that because you are fueling them by being so dialed into their needs, their wants, and their desires. And it's sort of a dynamic that is completely exhausting for the person who's creating the supply, which would be you as the daughter if you have a narcissistic parent. This then leads you to end up a lot of times in narcissistic relationships as an adult, other relationships, which is also extremely painful. You might have anxiety and depression because narcissists a lot of the times don't take, as we know this, they don't take responsibility for their actions. A lot of times they will scapegoat or blame you as the child to deflect blame off of them. And this can be really, studies show that this can increase anxiety in you as an adult and as a kid. You might also experience fear of rejection and abandonment because a lot of times you had a parent who was threatening that, right? Conditional love, which is what a narcissist is capable of, creates a fear of abandonment because we know if we don't do the thing they want us to do, that they will reject us. There's a whole discard element to these narcissistic personalities. You may have difficulty trusting because if you have a parental figure who's a narcissist, they are not trustworthy emotionally. You know that they're constantly manipulating you. It's so painful, gaslighting you. They don't have empathy for you, which is also so painful. It's really hard to develop a sense of trust when the person who you're supposed to be able to trust the most is someone that you sort of trust the least. You also can get really good at people pleasing if you had a narcissistic mother. And this is just you putting other people's wants, needs, desires above your own. And this is to your own detriment because this is what was expected of you as a child. So we just sort of replicate this in adulthood. And a lot of times we will find people who are just as manipulative in the same way because it's familiar to us. So we're sort of having a repeating relationship reality, as I call it. A lot of times, if you were raised by a narcissistic mother, you will be an expert at other people's feelings, but you really are confused and it's hard for you to identify your own feelings, your own emotions, because really you didn't have someone who was helping you co-regulate. It's like you didn't get to identify your emotions in the way that we normally do, because when you have a mother who is not narcissistic, she's co-regulating emotions with you. If you're in pain, she's like, oh, you immediately can see that we are attuned. If you're not narcissistic, you are attuned to your children. And the benefit to them is that they feel seen, right? Having a parent attuned to us, especially when you're pre-verbal, is so important. And a lot of times, if you had a narcissistic mother, you did not have that. You might also have poor self-esteem or a negative self-image, right? Because the conditional love thing really can impact that. Narcissistic mothers will see you literally as an extension of them, right? So this is them being like, you have to be like me. And especially if your mother is a narcissist, that's really painful because you don't want to be like them. So I feel like the poor self-esteem comes from never being seen as for who you actually are. It is very painful. And negative self-image, because if you were scapegoated by a narcissistic mother, that can stick with you as well. Another thing you may suffer from is perfectionism, because narcissistic mothers are so incredibly critical. It's almost like you feel like if you can do stuff perfectly, then you can reduce the intensity or the frequency of their criticism, which of course isn't really true. It's just a hope, but really it's kind of a pipe dream, because no matter what you do, they will find something to be critical of. Also, having poor boundaries is major. So narcissistic mothers themselves struggle with bad boundaries because they have such an excessive need for control and they have a lack of empathy. So this makes them oblivious to what they're doing. A lot of times they honestly are oblivious to how they're impacting other people. Now, that's not a justification for their behavior, but there's truth in that they are so driven by their own wants, needs, desires, their own agenda, that they're trampling people's boundaries left and right. They are the biggest boundary destroyers going, but they wouldn't recognize that. Of course, that's one of the biggest frustrations with having a narcissist as a mother, is that there's no satisfaction because they're pretty much never admitting what they've done or that they've done something wrong, which is really hard to deal with. And then the last thing is you might be extremely self-critical. Underneath the narcissism is really a fragile sense of self. It seems like they're so boisterous and, they think they're so great and they're full of themselves, but really it's like a house of cards. And the truth is that there really is a fragile sense of self in there and a negative self-image in there. So those are ways that you can, if you're feeling those things, experiencing those things in your own life, this really is an indication of having a narcissistic mother. But the question is, what can you do, right? What actually can you do? Well, there's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, first of all, become an expert, right, on narcissism. Become an expert on narcissistic mothers and how daughters can survive. Like, there's so much out there. I've done a lot of work, but there's a lot of people who've done a lot of work. So we'll give you some resources in the guide. You can just go to terricole.com/guide to get it. But the second thing is boundaries, right? To heal, you have to be able to draw boundaries, which might mean limiting contact with your maternal impactor. It might mean going low, right? Or no contact. And I never say this as like the first thing that someone should do, but you really have to be honest with yourself about how much damage this relationship is doing to you, right? Your self-esteem, because it's really hard to heal if you're still in a relationship with someone and if they're still actively harming you. That makes it very difficult to heal because we have all of these, it's like new cuts, right? New pain. And what you really need to do is go back and sort of heal the old pain, which if we continue getting stabbed by somebody, metaphorically, it's really difficult to be able to go back and heal. And this is a way that you can protect yourself, is with healthier boundaries. Also, focus on you. Because most of the time, if we were raised by a narcissistic mother, we were very comfortable focusing on other people. We were indoctrinated into a world where our job was to focus on the maternal impactor and make sure that she had what she needed and that she was okay and that everything was okay, right? It was really not about you. And so this is a new world where focusing on you and you being your top priority, that's actually healthy. And I know people think it's not, or they don't know, or they're confused, but I promise you, how you feel, what you think, and what you want needs to matter to you the most. And that is healthy. We also can compromise in relationships, and we do. But I think a lot of times, if you were raised by a narcissistic mother, you're not even in the mix. We're so busy focusing on managing other people and how they feel and what they're thinking and are they okay, and we really need to focus on ourselves. Another thing to think about is your anger, because being the daughter of a narcissistic mother is really painful. And a lot of times we end up stuffing that anger, and then that anger turns into depression. That anger, it's like we turn it in on ourselves. And it's confusing because when you're angry, you're really not depressed. They're not the same things. But it's almost like we transmute the emotion into an emotion that will be more readily acceptable, even to ourselves. Because a lot of us were raised that being angry is bad, especially as women. But depression in daughters of narcissistic mothers, so much of the time, honestly, is repressed anger. So we want to get in there. We want to honor that anger. Like, we really need to allow ourselves to be mad because you got a raw deal. And there's nothing wrong with you, and you're not a bad daughter for admitting that and knowing that. Have compassion for yourself, right? Self-love, self-focus. Be really aware of your inner dialogue. Because if you have a very punitive inner voice, a very mean and caustic inner voice, I promise you, that is not your voice. That is probably the internalized voice of a critical mother. So we really need to turn the volume down. And for you to develop a real solid sense of self and have a real sort of love affair with yourself, it's like you need to take the time to focus on you. And this can feel very uncomfortable if you've been raised by a narcissistic mother because you are so used to focusing on them. But learning to focus on you is so important. And I think that we have to get to a point where we go, like, you've had enough. And I get a lot of questions about, like, what do I owe my narcissistic mother, in life, aging. And I think that there's something really important about recognizing that that's for you to decide. So you don't owe someone who abused you anything. You really don't. And I know that that's painful and hard, but it's true. So I really want you to think for yourself, how much contact, if your maternal impactor is still alive, how much contact do you really want with them? What can you do without self-abandoning? How much time do you spend with them? And then how do you feel when you're done spending time with them? Because for my therapy clients who have narcissistic mothers that they're trying to work it out with, they're trying to make it happen, they still want to sort of please them. It's just a losing battle because you won't be able to please them because no matter what you do for them, they're like an endless pit of need. And so I'm not saying that it can't get better, but it will get better when you have boundaries. Better boundaries is the thing that can make it better. And what I've also seen with my therapy practice is clients who've walked away from the relationship and gotten no contact for a period of time. When they decided to come back together, their mother was on better behavior because they realized that they would cut off from them. You do not need to, and I don't want you to, let a narcissistic parent abuse you. You don't owe that to them. And a lot of you are concerned about your narcissistic mother having a relationship with your children, because the moment she can no longer control them, she will turn on them in the same exact way. And you know that's true. Like there's no other opportunity if she's actually a diagnosable narcissist. But that's on you to create boundaries with your mother and your children. You need to protect your children from their grandmother if she becomes abusive. Like that's literally your job as a parent. And so you have to heal the child within you in order to protect your own children. So I'm going to give you all of these ideas in the guide. Go to terricole.com/guide. And I'll also be sharing a bunch of resources with you. Listen, you have this. You did not deserve this lot in life, but I promise you there are things that you can do to make it better for yourself. And you don't deserve this treatment. You have suffered enough. So it really is time to heal from having a narcissistic mother, and you absolutely can. And I am here cheering you on. I hope you have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you. I also want to say thank you so much for your comments. You know, I read them all. And this is from Basil's Bruno 84 under the video, How to Identify and Manage Your Emotional Triggers. And they say, such good content. You just justified years of me refusing to watch films about slavery, I am a woman of color, and the news. Both make me feel super anxious and at times sick to my stomach. My husband has been teasing me for years. As you said, I prefer to read about events, and I will rarely watch, except if I know I can stop the video if I want to. This makes me feel so much better because you've given me the knowledge and tools to set my boundaries more clearly. Also, I just learned I might be an empath, which explains so many things. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to write that comment. I super appreciate you doing so.